It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water, water, like water, like water, like water. Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. Water can flow or it can crash. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. Be water, my friend. Running water never goes stale, so you gotta just keep on flowing, keep on flowing. So you gotta just keep on flowing. So you gotta just keep on flowing. You have to train. You have to keep your reflexes so that when you want it, it's there. When you want to move, you're moving. I mean, you gotta put your whole hip into it. Snap it, snap it, become one with her. You better train every part of your body. I mean, you gotta put your whole hip into it. Snap it, snap it. You better train, become one with her. You better train every part of your never go stale, so you gotta just keep on flowing, keep on flowing. So you gotta just keep on flowing, just keep on flowing. Under the sky, there is but one family. Do not believe in styles. Styles separate man. It's a process of continuing growth, process of continuing. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. Water can flow or it can crash. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. Be water, my friend.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Greetings. Welcome. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you are here. That is originally that track, if you want to follow the link in the description box to it, is from Melody Sheep. If you're not familiar with Melody Sheep, you can get familiar with Melody Sheep by also linking to their YouTube channel in the description box below. For some reason, the Bruce Lee Be Like Water track in particular is not on their site anymore or on their channel. Maybe it's moved onto their actual website, but I just really like that track a lot. I have a Melody Sheep playlist on YouTube on my personal channel, and I just feel like the message was really appropriate for another part of the message that's coming in for today. So welcome back, everyone. Welcome if you're new to the channel. Thank you for being here. I swear that this title of the transmission today is not just clickbait, because I know that it's at these types of trigger words, right? These buzzwords that get people to focus in. But when you see the reading for today as part of this transmission, you'll see what I mean. So I hope everyone is doing well, taking very good care of themselves. We're just going to get right into it because the Astrology Summit Embodying Your Star Wisdom is still going on. My interview and talk is actually part of today's presentation. So I really want people to have space to focus on that. If that's something that they've registered for and they're still interested in doing, you can still register for it if you're interested in all of the speakers. It's a free Astrology Summit. There are 4 to 5, 6 speakers that are published every day from the website. So you can get that information also in the description box below. But I just want to get into it today. And it was tempting not to do any type of transmission, but when I saw the reading as it was unfolding, I was like, yes, we obviously have to talk about this. So, and just check in because we're going to have a third quarter moon on Thursday morning, early Thursday morning, late in the evening, Wednesday night, depending on where you are. And We're going to have our first Starseed Fellowship. So we'll have a Zoom chat for the monthly subscribers. You get that link by being a subscriber through Subscribestar. It's in the link below. And I think we're going to really just focus on that third quarter moon and really unpack a lot of the symbolism, because it's always these quarter moons where we really have our own crises points. So we have some conflict and some struggle within ourselves from the new moon. And it was a new moon in Pisces. So being like water is really going to I think, assist us right now. So I'm going to check in with the chat and see what's going on. Thinking of dusting off my bicycle. That's a really great idea. I love riding my bike. I'm actually going to inherit a really nice road bike because somebody else decided to upgrade. So I'm excited about that. I'm definitely excited about that. Time to dust off a lot of things, really. That's what it seems like to me, because we really are at the precipice. So if you've noticed, the Schumann, it's been incrementally louder each time it amplifies, but it also, there hasn't been any significant solar flaring in the last couple of days, maybe even the last week. Yes, there are pops and crackles. Yes, there are solar or coronal hole streams that we're connecting with that are making an impact on the geomagnetic field and, of course, our relationship to it. But it does seem like every time the Schumann seems to be peaking more often lately, and it's getting louder each time it peaks. So even yesterday we saw an amplification up to like between 60 and 70, I think. So it's getting louder, and I feel like that everything is getting louder right now, and we are in quite an interesting moment. And it does appear, based on what I'm looking at in this reading that I'm going to share with you, that we really are at a precipice, right? We're getting into that time frame right now. So, and we'll go over the astrology of today into tomorrow as our moon moves into Gemini, right? So we kind of get rousted from our slumber emotionally and our embeddedness and take with us all of the sensitivity to the world around us into our growing consciousness. And as we're going to see here, that's everybody. And we're about to face our first real challenge to that new moon avatar energy of what our real commitment is to the whole and what it means to be fully connected to everything else, that everything that happens to you happens to everyone else and vice versa. And the experience of being essentially Christ-like, that was, he's the avatar of the Piscean age, which we're still in. I don't think we're really going to move into the age of Aquarius until Pluto has really made an impact on Aquarius, which will be very soon, but it'll be a number of years of going through a lot of generating of power, extraction of power, but also destruction of old in order to make room for change in the Aquarian realm. So we'll get there. In the meantime, the Piscean aspect, I don't think is really done. And there was a promise of a return, regardless of what cultural or religious institution you're falling under. It's a pretty consistent theme of a return. And so what is it that we are committing ourselves to in this process? The Piscean energy is not easy, but it also is returning back to unity, right? And understanding that separation is nothing more than an experience that has been initiated from this unity for some evolutionary reason. So when you understand that and return to that and experience that, that is very, very powerful. And this is where we're going, right? It's the love that holds it all together. I mean, if you want to conceptualize God in this way, rather than anthropomorphize the creative source of all that we know, then I would say love is a really great place to put all of that energy, right? And this is what Pisces represents, the experience of that, not necessarily the idea of it or even the higher mind understanding of it, the true immersion in it and what that feels like. And everything can be sacred here. And in fact, it actually is. So let's just get right into the reading. I think that this is going to give some context to the intensity of right now. So could there be a massive solar flare? Yes, there are some filaments on the sun that are pretty strong and unstable from what I understand. And so there is a CME that left the sun as a result of a pretty large pop or adjustment, but it's not facing towards us, so I don't think it's going to have as much impact, and if it does, it's going to be minor. But that doesn't mean that any time now there's not going to be this massive solar flare that releases, because there is instability as the sun is in its rotation. So we'll see. We shall see. Let's look at this reading, guys. How is everyone feeling? I feel like we're going to have a lot to talk about tomorrow night, that's for sure. So you can see right away in this reading, we have the Nine of Swords, we have the Death card, we have Tower. So the first two are reversed. And so regardless, though, these are pretty significant themes, and it's not exactly hard to unpack the cruelty of the Nine of Swords, especially in its reverse position. This is very hard for us to accept what is already a very difficult experience of you can only take your mind can only take you so far until you have to just address what is, right? So let's start unfolding this. The mind can't stop thinking and analyzing. This is what happens when you get to the later stages of the sword suit. We have our 9, so there's this culmination factor. And cruelty, I mean, all the other suits certainly enjoy their moment of culmination for the most part, except for the swords, because it is, as you can see, it's sharp. It's sharp, and there is blood. And when you have Mars in Gemini, geez, I mean, it's in an area where it can really do some damage, or the damage is the result of the fact that we have no control over our experience of what is. So we can't ignore the fact that nothing leads anywhere. We have to actually make a decision. So the end of Gemini moving into Cancer is this space where we have to take all of the potential that has been developed consciousness-wise, all of the knowledge we've acquired, all of the information that we've gathered, all of the skill that we have, or the learning that we've done, and entertaining all of the options and flying through the conceptual reality eventually has to realize a truth. There has to be a facing up to a fact. There has to be something that is planted, a root system that establishes stability in the soil. And this does come from the plant, for instance, that pops out of the soil and is reaching towards the sun and growing in its own way, just like our consciousness is growing up towards awareness and understanding through the assimilation of knowledge or light or information. So, which is the same thing, right? And that's exactly how a plant is growing, is through photosynthesis. It's able to take photons and turn them into sugar, right? This is more advanced than anything I can think of biologically. Why aren't we looking to the plants? That's a good question. I know people are. When this card is reversed, though, this is very difficult. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of cruelty, there's a lot of despair, there's a lot of not accepting, right? The benefit of this card, for as cruel as it seems, is that there is a freedom that comes from making the decision to face up to the facts, to realize the truth, even if it hurts. And so in reversal, you can definitely see it as yourself, right? On an internalized experience. But I would say that our causal factor here is going to be this mass unacceptance of this and a really strong despair. Now, this is coming out in many ways right now. And when we have Mars involved, you can bet that there's a fight somewhere. And so if you can think about the situations where there is battle going on, you can see that it's also going to extract this realization of what is. And having a hard time being accepted. Now remember, we're talking about out there, I guess, right? The 3D or the Matrix, what we're experiencing and what is essentially being brought forward from everybody's inner experience, but it's still out there. And it's not going to be very easily accepted. I think there's going to be a lot of despair. You can feel the clamping down economically that we've talked about. So the heart of it really is the death card. We haven't seen this in a while, but seems pretty appropriate for the moment. And especially because the moon is one of the first transits for today is the moon meeting the north node or Rahu, which means that it's in a direct opposition to the south node, K2, right? The south node of the moon, which is in Scorpio. This is the death card. So number 13, we've talked about the Reaper and the Scythe, and you can see that there is this web of connection that looks, there is nothing more than a set of bones here. This is very Saturnian. In fact, this card has a lot to do with Saturn in the 8th house as well as Scorpio, because there is something very structurally embedded in physicality about this process. And you can see that there is over here the wings of a large bird, maybe an eagle perhaps. And so we have that transcendent spiritual nature, and also just kind of like the eagle is a predatory bird that's also got a strong connection to Aquarius, by the way. But also, and you see the bones and the remnants of a lot of different species here at the bottom, but there's this connection here up, and it looks kind of like fascia looks in your body, right? Or myofascial tissue, right, that covers the body, but also it does show that there is a big connection between the divine or the heavenly realm or something outside, the spiritual aspect outside of it that connects death here. And there is a sense of structural embeddedness into the material aspect that this is about. But there's also, it's like there is this connection to still our spirit that is part of this process as well. So when we get this card, it could literally mean death, and of course with it reversed, this is not going to be easy. And so really what we're looking at is the resistance to the change, the metamorphosis, the process of Pluto being in the middle of this Pluto return at the United States, the fact that it started almost to the day with Russia and Ukraine, as well as right before it being the full moon. So that incredible Leo full moon while the sun was still in Aquarius. So this is a resistance to that process, which is the transformation. And so there's fear, there's loss. The change is not welcome, right? People are holding back or wanting to keep what has to be given up, right? And refusal to understand and accept. There's going to be a lot of grief that people don't even realize is grief. Some of it's going to be very obviously grief and manifested in ways that will channel grief very directly, but others not so much. And this is why it's important to understand your chart, so you see where this may be, especially like Pluto right now, or where what's your 8th house and what's going on there. So that's important. But as a whole, oh boy, it's not going to be easy. So and who's experiencing this, who's resisting it is another question entirely. But we are still feeling it at a heart level in some way. It's part of our connection to the world outside of us from our own spiritual or energetic existence, right? So let's look at that, because we have some pretty strong stuff going on. The King of Forces, right? This is us or somebody that embodies this energy, but we're looking at where we draw our power from nature, right? We're drawing our power from nature, just like the King of Forces is, right? There's this beautiful nebula in the background. You have an elk, right? That is in the reading right here. I mean, this is more like a stag, but still, I mean, you're getting the same basic feel here from these two animals. You have a wolf, you have a rabbit. These two would normally not be hanging out together, so there's a calming element here. This is like a direct channel right into natural energy that this individual represents, be it us or some sort of symbol that we can that we can connect to. Jupiter in Pisces right now is a good example of this, exerting calming influences. The presence of a man who has powerful and positive energy comes with good intentions, honesty, gentleness, and activity connecting with earth energy and nature. So if you need some sort of symbol or to find this in your life right now, this is exactly where you want to go. Not only exerting this influence, but finding your own personal power in this influence, because we got the birth card and the elk surrounding, so it's also showing that the birth pains are pretty real, and the labor pains are real, or there may be delay. There's something going on here that is not exactly a comfortable birthing into existence, and we're gonna really have to keep ourselves. We can even just look at that. We're going to have to keep ourselves upright and in our own integrity. And a great way to do that, again, is to find our connection to our Earth Star chakra, to find grounded and rootedness in any number of ways, embodying your star wisdom. Geez, I can't even think of a better analogy here for this whole beautifully orchestrated and timed astrology summit. My gosh. So everything about this is where we're gathering our power. And the elk is, again, Wapiti, stand tall and maintain your dignity no matter what, and others will treat you with the respect that you deserve, not by overpowering. There's nothing overpowering about this or even this, right? There's nothing, right? He doesn't have armor on, doesn't have a helmet. He's got this little sword right here. He is completely Mother Nature's son, and completely connected to the natural elements and the star elements. Look at this nebula up here, this like lavender violet nebula in these upper chakras, dude, from top to bottom, right? From crown to toe, down through to the capillary system of the Earth's energy in and of itself. So, because we just had the birth card, obviously upright, in terms of an active energy, but this is outside of us. I feel like with its reversal, it does suggest a delay. It does suggest that there may be challenges, feelings of lovelessness, unfulfilled desire. People are having a hard time finding purpose, difficulty in finding purpose. So maybe they require investigation. Maybe we have to tap our love from within because we are feeling isolated. And we'll see that there's something to this, actually. Delay with new beginnings. So the opportunity may not have presented itself yet. So we may need to gather courage to take the next step too. That's a big part of it. So again, here comes the elk around to really ground our energy with the King of Forces while we go through what may be a difficult birthing or labor process, or, maybe we need to really bear down. I mean, that sounds crazy, but not really. And it's not so much like a force. It's just to be in alignment. And these are very strong characterizations between the elk and the King of Forces and birth, right? Like, look at this beautiful imagery of fertility and motherhood and a sense of security and safety and newness, right? So it's just not easy right now. So we need to find ourselves identifying with this energy, okay? So now what's interesting to me is where our attention seems to be on some sort of miracle, right? Archangel Raphael is great because the healer magician, and really represents the energies of love and miracles, right? Because there's help that comes from behind this card. It's often in the guise of an actual person. It is somebody that shows up in a helpful position in order to bless journeys, to be part of what we would call a miracle or healing or reuniting family or love, right? We're really kind of focused here. And renewal of a lost dream, time of great achievement, and so maybe we want to create a space or just allow in an awareness of this type of healing energy or this something to sanctify or bless this process. This is a very mercurial energy. So we'll talk about Mercury today because there's going to be a connection with Black Moon Lilith, as they are both degrees of air signs today, and they come into this trine. So what's interesting is what surrounds this reading, and I'm curious what people have to say about it moving forward, because we see there's something about solitude with the snow, and there's also right here, right, take some time out of your usual solitude is not about isolation. Solitude is a choice. Solitude is about disconnecting from everything and unplugging. Find a quiet place connected to the natural world. We know that this is part of what is fulfilling us and sustaining us right now as we go through a very intense and very resisted change that will trigger that precipice. It really will. I mean, you see that the Tower is our outcome here. So solitude is a conscious choice, and so remember that you're never really alone. So if you need to step away, which the Eight of Roses reversed really does suggest, to step away or to identify that things are changing in terms of your tight-knit spiritual groups. This is very Cancerian. You may feel like you don't belong, you don't resonate, or you may feel like being alone, and you want to minimize exposure to a lot of interaction, which seems really counterintuitive, but there is something about right in this moment. It's not so much that we push away or minimize exposure, but again, it comes back to being able to hear our own voice and allow in, the help or the direction that we need. Or perhaps we may have felt disengaged from places that have been supportive, or there's a rift with this, or there's a change that people are really having a hard time with. Perhaps it's through the time of solitude that we've experienced that will allow us to acknowledge where we actually want to be with these types of tight-knit communities, families, our relationships. If it needs to change, perhaps we want to make amends with things, or maybe to heal and move on. All of it does seem like, though, that we're meant to take some time in order to reestablish our connection, not only to ourselves, but to nature. And in that process, there may be a recognition or some movement. Maybe it's not going to be easy. Maybe there's going to be an even further rift, possibly. I don't know. I think more is that we may feel disengaged from people or not emotionally secure. And the Leopard is like, you're never alone, right? You're never alone when you choose to be in solitude. And perhaps that's where we're going to find the blessings or the miracle that we're looking for. This is very interesting because the Tower, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself, right? Number 16, the Tower, which is the sudden realizations, the breakout, the kick in the ass that creates sudden realizations that crush old values and views. So we lose our secure fortress of beliefs, but it's going to allow us to take a big step forward. Again, there's something about the where we thought we belonged or what we've been part of that is really shifting and changing at an emotional level. And maybe it's getting wider. Maybe we are reestablishing stronger bonds in that way as well. It's only at the precipice that we people will find the will to change. And that's the Tower through and through, is that the destructive moment comes and it wakes people up. And of course, this has a lot to do with Uranus as well. But Mars is in the territory of Uranus right now in a degree that is actually completely in line with, a sudden burst of lightning that destroys everything. So keep that in mind. You do see that there is the Dove of Hope. This is where Saturn is right now. And here is, that consciousness that is really what is the gravitational wave or the wave of energy. You can see it come through that's really just bursting everything apart. It's awareness. And it's going to come at a lot of resistance and a lot of pain and despair, but, and really people just having a hard time accepting it. But at the same time, it's the lack of accepting. I think it's the resistance that's going to trigger this type of event, which many of us have been kind of anticipating for a while, just wondering like when. There's been a lot of opportunity astrologically. It's going to be interesting with this third quarter moon, or first quarter moon, excuse me, and then leading up to the full moon. Wow. Because if light goes through a prism and bursts into its full spectrum of visible light in a rainbow, right? If you don't know if you don't understand that unity and differentiation are one and the same, then it will look like things shattered apart, like it was destroyed. So, this is an important thing to pay attention to right now. I don't know if that means right this moment we're going to see this unfold, but this dynamic is exactly where I think is a very good overall map of how to navigate what is coming probably in the next 10 days, okay? Roughly. Who knows, right? Who knows? Because it's all about everybody's perspective, everybody's energetic offerings at this point. Like we all have, it's all equal, and it's getting more so all the time. So let's look at the astrology, because I think that that's going to anchor a lot of this. What I would say is it's getting pretty like heady out there. Let's put it that way. Especially with all this Pisces energy, not even heady, just like, whoa, like what is going on? And but feeling it so much. Like every time the Schumann like amplifies, you can just feel it like a shockwave through your body, and people reported heart palpitations, and it made me realize, yes, there were some moments where I could feel the surge through my body, and just not, having no reason to feel that way, just all of a sudden, and being like, whoa, what is going on? And so it's rippling through, my friends. And the good thing we have this map. Good thing we have this fourth dimensional map, so that we can at least have an idea of the territory energetically. So I'm going to exit out of some things. I'm going to check in with the stream here. Looking pretty good, guys. And let me know if you have any questions or if anything's coming up for you. Okay, so I brought this at the first real transit of today, as of the 8th of March, according to my position on the planet. But this is 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the U.S., and so looking at roughly midnight on the west coast of the U.S., and then, into the morning, the further across the Atlantic you go. So first of all, we have the moon meeting the North Node, still in the Pleiadian nature. I think that this was a really powerful moment to identify with, and energetically and in our own feelings, with where we're going at a soul level, and what it is that's pulling us that way, which really is a cultivation of natural energies for all of us, right? That is just the most, fundamental drive before the consciousness really starts to split into an awareness of me and other, is that we are in alignment with what is, for the sake of what is, and for everyone's enjoyment. And so the opposition here to the South Node in K2 at this moment, with this death card and the Scorpio energy involved in the overall transmission of today, is this is the X-ray, right? This is the aspect that we actually don't want to emotionally look at, but it's almost like a mirror. And the thing about this position of Scorpio is, when you get deep enough into the power dynamics, your capacity as a feeling being, or as, an emotional being, is able to have a view of the structural knowledge of any relationship rather than just the surface level view, right? It's like an X-ray photograph, and X-rays are a wavelength of the electromagnetic spectrum that is able to penetrate in past, organics, basically. And that's how we use them to, see what's going on inside the body. The idea is that it's about the investigation so deeply into the underlying structures that you have a penetrating energy that is able to see into it. This is in fact, I think, our reversal of the death card in the reading at the heart of things, is that we do feel that we do feel fundamentally deep within ourselves that it's where we're headed is something that is really for all of us to be able to grow and to thrive. But that does not take away from the experience of where we've been, which is the capacity to see into the structural underbelly. And I think that this opposition really brought this out in all of us at a very more accessible level than just the subconscious. It's really sitting in the heart of things, and it's going to express itself in many different ways. No matter how much we identify that this is all a show, and a lot of it is scripted, and that's part of the realization of facts that is starting to hit people in general. But we all still have to have the experience of the feeling of that and the power of that, and the power of being able to see the underlying and how much damage that does to the organic tissue in order to do that. So there's a lot of themes here, but it really brought this to the surface, I think, for us. And we're going to take that with us as we move into this Gemini moon time and we have our square. And it's going to be very challenging. We can all feel it growing and its crescendo type of moments here. So let's see. I want to pull us into what's happening. So then from there, as we're going to see, is the moon is going to not only come into a square with Mercury that is soon to finish its transit of Pisces or Aquarius in general, and move into Pisces, which is in some ways going to be such a escapist relief for a lot of people into the realm of imagination and fantasy. But boy, a Mercury in Pisces, there's really no limit except your own imagination. And depending on where you might find Mercury in your chart, that's going to put a lot of that watery, dreamy, and also very compassionate view on things into that area. So good to be aware of that as well when that happens. But in the meantime, we see that the moon in Taurus is in a square to Mercury in Aquarius. So a couple overlaps here. Number one, this is the degree that we had our full moon lunar eclipse. Don't forget, we're still in that pocket of time. We're not going to be out of that pocket and starting a new cycle until the end of April into May. And so we are still addressing those themes that have rippled out from that eclipse time, and this is the same degree. The eclipsed moon was at this degree, and so now the moon is not eclipsed. It's not exactly full either, but there's some illumination to it, and it's not distorted any more than it's distorted in its angle to the sun. But this is about releasing what has fulfilled its part of the cycle and stepping into the new one as if it is new, even if it's the end of the cycle. More of those themes of death and rebirth, more of those themes of the metamorphosis and the catalyzing action of alchemy and change, right? And what we can do with that. So the square to Mercury, now Mercury is at the degree that we just had that huge full moon in Leo, the same degree, the natal moon of the United States as well, this degree of 28 degrees Aquarius. So they're going to come into a square, and the mind, remember, this is where the full moon was, and showing us in our relationships or in our ability to hold emotionally the intensity of that strength and that confidence and that combustion, which Leo represents, passion. Depending on where you saw it in your chart. Now, and and the amount of energy that the collective is holding at that point. Now the mind is visiting this realm, and in Aquarius, certainly the Mercury is a lot happier, and is able to take in larger sets of data and information, and is really just more connected to the bandwidth of the social pattern, rather than with signals in general, digital signals, and for instance, like it is in Gemini, right? That's where it wants to be, and in Virgo as well. But in Aquarius, it's definitely taking in the collective signal, okay? And is the mind. I would say the square here with Mercury and the moon is, again, we're feeling into this release. We're feeling into the need to, for the power to be generated, or the power to come full circle. There has to be a release, right? The cocoon, the caterpillar into the cocoon, out as the butterfly. And this square, these fixed squares, I mean, you're talking about the mind, really the mind, and our thoughts and our capacity to connect into the social collective as a whole, into our own feelings, right? Something that's very deeply embedded into the world around us materially and energetically, the natural rhythm. And I think that we, honestly, I think that we are, the real challenge with this is nothing, I wouldn't say nothing more, but it's going to be really about where is our mind and where are our feels. And again, this is exactly where I would say the alignment of the vertical axis of the reading is in terms of, we're looking for, I'm not saying a miracle, but we are at least mentally aware to an extent that we can imbue every act that we take that is part of living in close communion with nature, right? We can at least imbue it with significance, because that's something that humans do that other animals don't do. This is the step between the living as part of the ecosystem and humanity becoming stewards of that ecosystem, and becoming technologically aware and becoming socially aware of ourselves. That doesn't mean there can't be significance. That doesn't mean that we can't do these things as sacred acts. And the mind is looking, I would say, connecting into what that would look like, how we execute that in our actions, in our behaviors. And the moon is just pulling us way into, I just feel like a frantic kind of like, how can we do something? How can we save something? How can we be part of this? And it's really just be part of it, right? Just find that significance, even if you have to, let go of some things. I think that's really where the struggle is this deep feel that we all have, that it's just letting go and seeing it as a new opportunity, newness to come about, instead of frantically holding on to what we can, so that we can feel safe and secure as a collective. I know that all of us realize what is happening here, but we still have to contend with the experience of it within ourselves and everyone else. And so, pay attention. Where's Mercury? Where's Aquarius in your chart? This is where the mind's going to be the most active in terms of where the intelligence and the mental skill can be applied. So for Aquarius people, it's going to be, if you have Aquarius, the first house, it's going to be in your personhood, right? Squaring your fourth house of Taurus, where your power is coming from. So lean into the square. It is a conflict. You're really a conflict between your thoughts and your feels. And I think we have a lot to learn from this, wherever we found this. And what's going to happen is that Mercury is going to come into this last degree of Aquarius and is going to trine Black Moon Lilith directly. So even if we're in the feels having tension or conflict, just know also that what we're going to find is something even deeper, that is going to stabilize at least our mind, but it's still going to be in a deep, deep feeling. And that's going to be interesting. That's kind of the last transit of today. So we'll get to that. But in the meantime, not only is the moon in a square to Mercury, but at the same time, it's in a trine to Pluto. So there is another feel oriented to Pluto, the agent on the card of Scorpio, right? It is the Grim Reaper, the Lord of the underworld. And so while our mind is struggling against this, it's really going to be the power of Pluto that is, it's going to bring up a lot of deep, raw feelings. But in a trine, I think what it's going to allow for is a little bit of, groundedness of this feeling-based experience of releasing that which has already run its course in order to step into something new and fertile. And as we saw with the birth card, this is a difficult process. It's like going, actually the Sabian symbol of 28 degrees Taurus is a woman who's past her menopause is coming into a new love, right? Coming into a new phase, coming into the crone phase as, completely embracing it and loving it as part of the cycle. And it's, imagine if you are, not only going through the experience of that, which is very uncomfortable in the body, but also if you're resisting, if there's any resistance to it, emotionally or psychologically or even spiritually, there can be some real challenges here. So this is just Pluto is beyond what we can actually do in a material or even in our mind. Our mind can traverse these areas, but right now it's our feels. It's how we feel on the inside and our connection to the Pleiadian nature, for instance, that is way more stabilizing right now. So anything you can do to embody yourself is just perfect. And especially Pleiadian. I mean, if you are in, any type of sexual contact with people you genuinely love, and this is a great time. This is a great time to do that, because Pluto in Scorpio is also about the energy that's created in those situations. And so if you really want to practice like some very wholesome, quote unquote sex magic, this is, that's part of the Pleiadian nature straight up. But other embodiment practices, right? In terms of just getting outside, putting your bare feet on the ground, taking, soaking or sauna, something like that, any movement art, right? We started this video with Bruce Lee, the training of the body is one way to embody yourself. So Qigong, Tai Chi, Kundalini yoga, Hatha yoga, any kind of exercise, any kind of movement art in general, to embody, right? Toning, and chanting and singing and dancing and playing a drum or a rhythm instrument. I could go on and on and on and on. So, but these are ways to embody, because I think this is really going to help in the acceptance of the cycles unfolding, right? And death is not an end. Death is merely the, unfortunately, for a long time, we have been recycled back in. So no wonder we are afraid of death inherently, right? Knowing that we're going to get recycled back into this, matrix of a death cult, but it's not like that outside of this density, right? That we realize that it's much more of a cyclical wavelength of experience, and then there's nothing to fear in terms of your consciousness being infinite, because you're one with God, right? So, but here in this experience, we are still living out what it means to have been open to our consciousness, and that means accepting the oscillation, the contraction and release. Anyway, I know that was quite a diatribe. I'll get off my monologue stand right now, but that was I can feel it moving through me right now, so I'm just going to let it go. Let it fly. But that's where I'm getting at with this moon trine Pluto today. And so right before it moves into right into Gemini. So also Vesta is at the very last degrees of Capricorn right now, past Pluto as well. Vesta being the hearth flame, the hearth fire, right? The goddess Vestia or Hestia or Vesta, that is what holds the community together, the eternal flame of our soul, and what holds us all together and allows us to practice and sustain ourselves, through cooking, through keeping us warm, through giving us something to gather around. The fire is important in terms of a symbol. And so the moon will then make a trine to her too at these last degrees of Capricorn and Taurus again. And this is, I would say, about understanding, like true understanding. You don't really understand something until you have immersed yourself in the experience of both. Just like you have to plant the seed into the soil if you want consciousness or a new life to grow. And what's interesting about this particular connection is that it's in our ability to see the whole pattern in its fullness, right? Our ability to read the writing on the wall, our ability to read the tea leaves, to see the signature of the entire geometric fractal of our physical reality, whatever that means to us. Our ability to it's our ability to see the whole picture that is really going to hold us together and give us something to really give us a sense of unity, I would say, and creative transformation. Again, and it'll allow for us to really understand the full experience. Because part of the experience of the seed going into the soil is the seed and the shell of the seed has to go, right? That's the submission of the ego to the higher consciousness growth. And even though we still have to have a healthy ego, but eventually the seed point releases itself in order for the new growth to come forward. And you have to understand both aspects of that. And as long as we can feel into that, I think we're going to be okay. I think it's all about where we are going. So any embodiment practices, I cannot stress it enough. The Astrology Summit is so timed. I can't even believe it. Jamie is just, she's so skilled and gifted in the way that she brings people together, having Venus as a Pleiadian marking for her. She's the organizer, Jamie Goldstein. So, and we talked about that a lot in our talk that is on today. So let's see. Let's move forward here. I want to move through. So here's the next big thing here is that the moon moves into Gemini and is going to make connections not only to Venus, but to Mars in early Aquarius, right? And so there will be a stabilization, at least initially, with our inner landscape that is starting to feel differentiation, starting to feel polarity. We're starting to feel into our curiosity and our options and discovery, knowing that we have experienced fully the process of, reaching up to the light. And now we get to do that. And so at least there is a stabilization mentally with Venus, Mars, and the moon in Gemini. So we're going to address that. But it's also this particular trine with Mercury at the last degrees of Aquarius with Black Moon Lilith over also in Gemini that I really want to draw attention to. So first, again, Venus and Mars are in the first degrees of Aquarius, right? Really working with the fundamental themes of what it means to be a society, to be an awake society, to be, or a hive, right? That could also be part of Aquarius. It doesn't really matter what the structure is because that's up to us, right? That's the whole point. This just represents the the different symbolic aspects of what we choose to do ourselves and together. And so if the energy of Aquarius or the 11th house is the Borg, that's because that's what we've created. If it is an awakened human collective in tune with nature, that's what we've created. If it is Atlantean, scientist out of control, treating everyone and building a slave race, that is what we get in the 11th house. That's the energy of it, right? Our ability to be able to connect into it is has been part of our training recently. So Venus and Mars are still traveling together. Soon Venus is going to outpace Mars now that she's coming out of shadow and is moving ahead now. And because Venus in her orbit around the sun is quicker than Mars is. So she'll eventually leave Mars, but they're still together. And so this trine at the very beginning of the moon in Gemini with Mars and Venus is there has been a consummation, right, at 0 degrees Aquarius of a very spiritualized and idealized form of humanity, something that will live beyond just those who have built it, right? Something that has longevity, and something that represents this ideal structure. And so they're still working in those early stages of what that means. And part of that part of accepting that is that there's also the acceptance of the contrast, which is at any moment nature can take away what we've built. So that's part of living as an awake and aware and conscious species in third density, right? In this material realm, at least here on this planet. I think that the moon in Gemini meeting these positions that are still early on, it's still fresh, it's still new, it's still, and truly in solidarity with the highest ideals of what the human collective can bring, that can create, right? And making sure that we individually, and we'll really feel it, especially where Venus is today, right? That we, within our relationships and value and worth and resources are becoming so obvious. And we saw that in the transmission yesterday with Venus, okay? 3 degrees Aquarius. This is about, you can see it right here. Where is it? Yep. 2 to 3 degrees Aquarius. This is when we identify with not the collective status that has become unbearable, but we have realized and repudiated that collective status which has become unbearable. It's coming right into our resources right now. And so there is a moment of stabilization with a moon in Gemini. It won't last, but what also is important to realize is that it does show us that we are stepping into this, with a fully open mind and feeling a fully open mind to what this could look like and accepting that. So Mercury in this trine to Lilith now in her retrograde back into Gemini. Now this is I think interesting because, and this is really the cap of the day. The last real transit of the day. And so Mercury, before it moves into Pisces tomorrow, we're going to hit this moment of awareness, like really becoming aware and mentally in communication in some way. And something, there is some collective consciousness that is revealed to those who have successfully emerged from the chrysalis, right? From their metamorphosis, right? This is like a direct, aha moment for Mercury, like the individual third eye gnosis of the whole thing, right? And this is very accessible with Mercury in Aquarius. And it's in a trine to Lilith, which is in a degree that is, in late Gemini, which is the first mockingbird of spring, which is not really necessarily about mocking, but a mockingbird takes different segments of sound or phrases and weaves them together into their own song. And depending on, again, where you find Mercury and where you find Black Moon Lilith in your chart, you're going to see that we may have access in a very conscious and mentally right in front of us, right? This opening of this unified experience, right? Which, if we allow Lilith to keep us grounded to the our capacity to weave together our own creative voice or our own creative expression with everything that we are gathering while the moon moves through Gemini. We're gonna be okay, and we're gonna have such clear. Wow, it's going to be very clear, I think, of the consciousness, but it's only revealed to those, I would say, who have emerged from a metamorphosis. But I would also say that a metamorphosis could be initiated in a split second with a tower moment, right? We know that can happen. So that's something to consider as well. Remember what 29 degrees of Leo is. Not only was that like where the eclipse is in 2017, it's also pretty much where we just had our full moon. And this is like a mermaid coming out of the water, right? Emerging. And so it's all of that happening at once, and what that actually feels like. Like, what is the signature of that? And you may find that, it could be a split second. It could be a tower moment, or it could just be a revelation to people who have already emerged from this metamorphosis intact somehow and have access to this. And we can take that and weave it together into our own song. I think that this is going to really stabilize us in a way that we'll need as we go through this quarter moon in Gemini, because I have a feeling it's going to be it's just going to be a lot of movement back and forth within us, and maybe out there in terms of our experience. We may see a lot of people vacillating emotionally through the next 2 days as the moon comes through Gemini. So this right here, this trine by the end of the day, stabilizing us something deeper even than our own everyday feelings or our own intuitive nature. Something, again, this is about getting down to the roots of our planetary ancestry, where we come from, connecting to the planet. And I feel like this was absolutely spelled out in the intuitive reading. So I'm going to leave it there. I think that we have quite a bit to work with today, and I want you to have everybody to have the mental space to be able to still participate in the summit. So it's going on for 2 more days, and you can still register and have access to everyone, even if you haven't registered yet. So I'm going to check in with the chat real quick. Barbara says, solitude is a good way right now. It feels like to buffer ourselves from matrix triggers enough to gather fresh courage and inspired perspective. Yeah, it's and I wonder too if it is a good way, right? And that doesn't mean that we have to like push people away or feel like that we're alone. Perhaps this means that this is a very Syrian starseed trait, by the way. Maybe consolidate those relationship ties even more, like be willing to draw those people in that sangha even tighter, and not as a means to like protect yourself from having to experience anything, but maybe just knowing who is part of your buffer and who you need to actually buffer from, I think can be really important. And there may be people in your immediate vicinity or your emotional connections, your family, that may be really struggling with this horizontal, experience that we saw in the reading, if you remember. So, if we just go back real quick just to remind ourselves how intense this whole thing is. And there might be other people that are really just struggling so much that you have to provide a buffer for yourself. And maybe it's just an hour. Maybe it's just, where'd you go? There we are. Right? Cruelty, death, tower. This is no joke. This is no joke. But remember, that's not what we're experiencing energetically. This is how it's, what's going on in our awareness, and in the material, cause and effect type of experience. But we're not there necessarily energetically. And we may find that healing or that miracle or that blessing by giving that buffer from other people right this moment, because I'm sure there'll be a necessity. I have no doubt there's going to be a necessity for us in the definitely by the full moon. Once we see the full moon, we're going to see a lot of how we are going to be able to handle ourselves in the face of, the end of the sun at the end of Pisces, right? Because just wait until April. Wow. When Jupiter and Neptune are together, right? And we're coming into the end of Pisces with these really large planets as well. So I'm going to leave it there, my friends. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are interested in a reading, if you're interested in energy work to support your process, if you are interested in the Starseed Fellowship and getting on the email list, everything you need is in the description box below. Thank you for being here. Oh, I love you guys. Take very good care of yourselves today. I'll see you all monthly subscribers for the first fellowship meeting tomorrow. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern time. That's a Zoom chat that you get access to through the Subscribe Star portal or the website, my profile. There we go. So I am actually offering it to a free month access to the exclusive content. Anybody that's on my email list that has had a reading with me, I'm offering a free month of access to these things. So if you haven't checked your email, maybe it went into your spam account and you're interested in it, you could do that as well. So, and if you're not on my email list, but you've had a reading from me, you better get on it and then let me know so I can put you on the list for the free month of subscription. All right, guys, have a great day. Enjoy the summit today. Enjoy your day. We're not going to be live tomorrow, so I will see you on Thursday for the Daily Medicine Transmission. Peace out.